The crystal glasses clinked against the mahogany dining table at Le Cirque, where my family gathered for our monthly dinner. My brother Marcus sat at the head of the table, his custom-made Italian suit practically gleaming under the chandelier light as he regaled everyone with tales of his latest business conquest. "Another successful merger," he announced, swirling his $500 wine. "Harrison Global will be joining our portfolio next week. A cool $100 million deal." He paused, shooting me that familiar condescending smile. "Speaking of business, how's that little shop of yours doing, Sophia?" I smoothed down my simple black dress of Chanel, though they'd never recognize it, and took a measured sip of water. "The antique store is doing fine, Marcus." "Still working out of that tiny place downtown?" my mother chimed in, her voice dripping with poorly concealed disappointment. "You know, your brother could always find you a real position at Sterling Enterprises. If they only knew that my tiny antique store was just the public face of my real business empire. While they thought I was struggling to sell vintage furniture, I had quietly built Nova Investments into one of the most powerful private equity firms in the country." "That's so kind of you to offer," I replied, watching Marcus preen at our mother's praise. "But I'm happy where I am." "Happy?" Marcus scoffed. "Sophia, you're 35, running a dusty little shop while I'm out here making real moves in the business world. The Harrison Global acquisition alone will transform Sterling Enterprises." I bit back a smile, thinking of the documents sitting on my desk at Nova's headquarters. The Harrison Global deal wasn't as secure as my brother thought. In fact, it hinged entirely on the approval of a mysterious private investor, me. "Tell us more about the Harrison deal," our father urged, beaming at his successful son. "This could be your biggest achievement yet." Marcus launched into the details, completely unaware that I had spent the last year quietly acquiring controlling interest in Harrison Global through a series of shell companies. "The paperwork will be signed tomorrow. Just a formality, really. Harrison's board has already approved the sale." "And the private investor?" my mother asked. "The one who owns the controlling shares?" "Some reclusive CEO," Marcus waved his hand dismissively. "Nova Investments. They've already agreed to the terms. Their representative will be there tomorrow to sign off." I thought about the meeting scheduled for 9 a.m. the next morning. About the look that would cross my brother's face when he realized that the mysterious CEO of Nova Investments was sitting right across from him at this very moment. "You should come see the signing ceremony," Marcus said to me with fake generosity. "Maybe you'll learn something about real business. Though," he smirked, "you might want to change out of your shop clothes first." I glanced down at my shop clothes, the understated but exquisitely tailored outfit that cost more than his flashy suit. "Thank you for the invitation. I'll definitely be there." "Really?" He seemed surprised, then amused. "Well, don't expect too much attention. This is a serious business matter, not a flea market negotiation." Our mother touched my arm. "Darling, maybe you should focus on your own modest ventures. These high-level dealings might be a bit over your head." If she only knew that my modest ventures included controlling interest in 3 major banks, a tech company valued at $2 billion, and soon her precious son's biggest acquisition target. "I'm sure I'll manage," I said quietly, checking my phone as it buzzed with a message from my assistant. "Final contracts prepared for tomorrow's meeting. Harrison Global Board confirms their support for the alternate plan." "Still using that old phone?" Marcus nodded at my device. A specially designed secure model that looked deliberately dated. "I could help you upgrade to something more current. My salary bonus this quarter was quite generous." I thought about the penthouse office where I made decisions that moved billions of dollars through global markets, about the private jet parked at the airport ready to fly me to Singapore next week for another major acquisition. "That's very kind," I replied, "but I prefer to live within my means." Marcus raised his glass. "To living within our means then, though some means are clearly more substantial than others." As my family laughed at his joke, I allowed myself a small smile. In less than 24 hours, they would learn just how substantial my means really were. The antique dealer they'd dismissed for years was about to become their most important business partner, or their biggest nightmare. The rest of dinner passed in its usual way. Marcus dominated the conversation with tales of his business acumen while our parents basked in his reflected glory. No one bothered to ask about my life beyond the occasional pitying reference to my little shop. As we prepared to leave, Marcus caught my arm. "Don't forget, tomorrow at 9 a.m. sharp. Though, he smirked, you might want to wait in the lobby. The conference room is for executives only. I collected my coat from the check room, a vintage Burberry that they assumed was second-hand, and headed for my car, a deliberately modest Audi that concealed its armored exterior and custom engineering. Everything ready for tomorrow? I asked my assistant through the car's secure line. Yes, Ms. Walker. The alternate proposal has been distributed to the Harrison Global Board. They're quite enthusiastic about our terms compared to Sterling's offer. I smiled, thinking of the chaos tomorrow would bring. Perfect. Make sure the cameras in the conference room are recording. I want to capture every moment when they realize who they've been underestimating all these years. The antique store my family mocked had been my first investment, bought with a small inheritance from my grandmother who taught me that true power lies in patience and discretion. While Marcus flaunted his wealth and connections, I built something far more substantial in secret. Tomorrow they would learn that the tiny shop they ridiculed was just the tip of a very large, very profitable iceberg. And my brother's moment of triumph was about to become a lesson in humility. I parked in my private garage beneath Nova's headquarters, looking up at the gleaming tower that no one in my family knew I owned. Tomorrow would change everything. But for now I had contracts to review and an empire to run. After all, success is sweetest when served with a side of surprise. I arrived at Sterling Enterprises headquarters at precisely 8:45 a.m., dressed in a custom Alexander McQueen suit that probably cost more than Marcus's monthly salary. The security guard at the reception desk looked at me uncertainly. I'm here for the Harrison Global signing, I said, watching him scan the visitor list. Oh. He frowned. Miss Walker from the antique store? Your brother left instructions that you should wait in the lobby. I pulled out a different business card. Sleek, black with just Nova Investments sealed embossed in silver. Actually, I'm here representing Nova Investments. The guard's eyes widened as he quickly made a call. Within seconds, Marcus's assistant came hurrying across the lobby, her heels clicking frantically on the marble floor. Ms. Nova, we had no idea. We were expecting. She glanced at her tablet, clearly flustered. Mr. Marcus said his sister would be waiting in the lobby? I finished for her, enjoying her confusion. Plans change. Shall we head to the conference room? The executive floor was already buzzing with activity. Through the glass walls, I could see Marcus holding court, gesturing dramatically as he spoke to the Harrison Global Board members. He'd positioned himself at the head of the table, exactly where I would soon be sitting. Marcus, his assistant interrupted nervously. Nova Investment CEO is here. He turned, his practiced smile freezing as he saw me. Sophia? What are you doing here? The Nova CEO is standing right in front of you, I finished, handing him my business card. Though you might know me better as your sister who runs that tiny shop downtown. The silence that followed was absolute. Marcus stared at the card, then at me, his face cycling through confusion, disbelief, and finally dawning horror. This is impossible, he stammered. Nova Investments is a multi-billion-dollar company. You sell antiques. I took my seat at the head of the table, forcing him to step aside. Actually, I own Nova Investments, which controls interests in everything from tech startups to global real estate. The antique store is more of a hobby. The Harrison Global Board members were watching with poorly concealed interest. They'd already seen my alternate proposal, one that valued their company significantly higher than Sterling's offer. But the merger documents, Marcus protested. Everything's been approved. The press release is ready. I opened my briefcase, removing a thick folder. About that. As the majority shareholder in Harrison Global, I'm exercising my right to consider alternate offers, including the one Nova Investments has prepared. Marcus grabbed the folder, his hands shaking slightly as he read. This is 40% higher than our offer. You wouldn't. Wouldn't what? I asked calmly. Make a better business decision? Isn't that what you've always told me I should learn to do? Our father burst into the room, obviously summoned by a panicked text from Marcus. What's going on? Marcus says something about Nova Investments. Hello, Dad, I smiled. We were just discussing how your daughter who runs that tiny shop is actually the CEO of Nova Investments and currently in control of the Harrison Global acquisition. He sank into the nearest chair, his face pale. But, all these years, I confirmed, while you were busy celebrating Marcus's modest successes, I was building an empire. Nova Investments currently manages over $12 billion in assets. The antique store you love to mock? Just a front for my real operations. Marcus found his voice again. You deliberately deceived us. Played the struggling shopkeeper while secretly. Secretly what? I cut him off. Building something substantial? Making smart business decisions? Isn't that what you've always claimed I should do? The Harrison Global CEO cleared his throat. Perhaps we should review Nova's proposal. The terms are significantly more favorable. You can't be serious, Marcus protested. She's my sister. This is our family company. And that's exactly why you never saw this coming, I said quietly. You were so convinced of your own success, so certain of my failure, that you never bothered to look deeper. I turned to the board members. Shall we proceed with the real business at hand? I believe we have some contracts to sign. As my assistant distributed the new agreements, I watched my brother's carefully constructed world crumble. The acquisition he'd bragged about at dinner just yesterday was slipping through his fingers, and there was nothing he could do about it. Our father tried one last time. Sophia, surely we can discuss this as a family. Like you discussed my career choices, my business decisions, my life. I smiled coldly. Odette, this is exactly what you always wanted. Your daughter finally learning about real business. The next hour was a blur of signatures and legal formalities. By 10 a.m. Harrison Global was officially part of Nova Investments' portfolio. Marcus sat slumped in his chair, his expensive suit wrinkled, his arrogance finally shattered. As the board members filed out, I gathered my documents, ready to return to my real office, the penthouse suite atop Nova's headquarters. Why? Marcus asked quietly. Why keep up this pretense for so long? I paused at the door, thinking of all the family dinners where they'd mocked my choices, all the condescending advice, all the years of being underestimated. Because, I replied, sometimes the best lessons come from learning how wrong you've been about someone. By the way, the antique store is having a sale next week. Do stop by, you might need some new furniture for your office. I hear Sterling Enterprises might be downsizing soon. The aftermath of the Harrison Global acquisition sent shockwaves through both our family and the business world. The press had a field day. Hidden billionaire reveals identity, and antique store owner's secret empire dominated headlines for weeks. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from family members who had suddenly discovered a deep interest in my life. Mom, darling, why didn't you tell us? We could have helped. Marcus, we need to talk about this. Family should work together. Dad, Princess, let's discuss some co-investment opportunities. I archived them all unread, focusing instead on integrating Harrison Global into Nova's portfolio. The acquisition was just the beginning. I had bigger plans in motion. A week later, I was working in my actual office, the top floor of Nova Tower with its sweeping city views, when my assistant announced an unexpected visitor. Your mother is in the lobby, Ms. Walker. She's quite insistent about seeing you. I watched on the security feed as she stood in the marble lobby, looking distinctly out of place despite her designer outfit. After making her wait an appropriately humbling 20 minutes, I allowed her up. This is quite impressive, she said, taking in the panoramic views and museum-quality art. How long have you had this office? I finished for her. 5 years. It's amazing what you miss when you're too busy critiquing someone's life choices to actually pay attention. She sank into one of my Italian leather visitor chairs. We were wrong about you. So terribly wrong. But you have to understand, we only wanted what was best. No, I cut her off. You wanted what looked best. There's a difference. I pressed a button and the wall of windows transformed into a display showing Nova's current holdings. Tech companies, real estate developments, financial institutions, an empire worth billions. While you and Dad were pushing me to get a real job like Marcus, I was building this. Every time you mocked my tiny shop, I was closing another major acquisition. The antique store wasn't my business. It was my cover. But why keep it secret? Why let us think? Think I was failing? I laughed softly. Because you never would have let me succeed on my own terms. You would have tried to control it, manage it, force it into your idea of what success should look like. My phone buzzed, another message from Marcus. His company's stock had dropped 30% since losing the Harrison Global deal. Investors were questioning his judgment, and the board was calling for an emergency meeting. Your brother needs help, my mother said quietly. Sterling Enterprises is struggling. I know, I replied. In fact, I just bought another 10% of their shares this morning. At this rate, I'll own his company by the end of the month. She gasped. You wouldn't. Wouldn't what? Make a smart business decision? Isn't that what you always wanted me to learn? The next few weeks brought more attempts at reconciliation. Dad tried to schedule business meetings. Marcus sent desperate proposals for partnerships. Even my aunts and uncles, who had spent years pitying their unsuccessful niece, suddenly discovered urgent reasons to visit my little shop. I kept the antique store open, though now it was staffed by professionals while I ran Nova from my real office. Sometimes I'd visit, sitting in the back room where I'd first started planning my empire, remembering how their mockery had fueled my determination. 1 month after the Harrison Global revelation, I received an invitation to a family dinner. Not at Lucerque this time, but at my parents' home. A small family gathering to clear the air. I arrived deliberately late, parking my now unnecessary modest car between Marcus's recently downsized vehicle and my father's familiar Mercedes. The atmosphere was decidedly different from our previous family dinners. Gone were the boasts about business deals and condescending advice. Instead, there was an awkward tension as they struggled to reconcile their image of the failing antique dealer with the reality of who I'd become. We've been doing some thinking, my father started after an uncomfortable silence. Perhaps it's time to unite the family's business interests. Sterling Enterprises could benefit from Nova's expertise. And resources, Marcus added quickly. We could create quite a powerhouse together. I took a slow sip of wine, the expensive bottle I'd brought, not the middling vintage they used to serve me. That's an interesting proposal. Tell me, what exactly would each party bring to this partnership?